Choosing the right watercolor paper for you. Did you know if you choose the right paper, it can make your painting process so much easier? And you need your painting time to be fun and rewarding, and this will encourage you to paint again and again with more excitement each time. So the key to making your art journey enjoyable, rewarding, and to get you somewhere and not to cost an arm and a leg. And what's the key? The key is paper. My name's Anica, and today we'll be solving the mystery of watercolor papers. You know, I totally redid this video. I started with all the facts and figures and statistics and ingredients of paper and how and what and where, and then I totally scrapped it and decided to take a different angle. What would I do if I started watercolor today? What would I tell you? If you're an absolute beginner, have a passion but really want to learn, you really need a paper that won't straight out discourage you. Unlike other mediums, watercolor really is dependent on the paper and totally flops with bad paper. Just like cooking eggs in a beautiful non-stick fry pan or cooking them in a burnt out old aluminium pan. The difference is ginormous, not even worth comparing. Yes, and I know that price matters. I'm on a budget too. Because my previous video was all about painting smooth washes, therefore using lots of water in your painting, I am focusing today on papers that are good for the job. If you'd like to see this video, the link is up here in the corner and in the description below. Firstly, my disclaimer. There may be a better recipe out there, and there are certainly papers that I've never tried, but this is what works for me. If you're watching this, I'm thinking you want to give watercolor your best shot, and so do I. So what's in my studio and why? My go-to top-notch watercolor paper is Arches and Saunders Waterford, with Baohong coming in at third place. My favorite texture is cold press because it's a beautiful in between the hot press and the rough, and it's just suitable for everything. But then on the other hand, I use very, very inexpensive sketchbooks that aren't even meant for watercolor for all my practice. And they're actually very good. I'll explain more. I'd love to know what your favorite paper is, how you practice, what you do it on, and what your favorite real painting paper is. Let me know in the comments below, and subscribe so that we can meet up again. Now let's get back to these sketchbooks. I've tried several, and some I absolutely did not like, but this black one is my favorite. It's the Signature Visual Art Diary premium drawing paper and made of 100% wood pulp. It certainly doesn't say anything about watercolor, but it has a certain texture and feel about it, and the way it handles, I'm really liking it. The brand also has some watercolor papers that I don't like. I like this sketchbook better. So it really is a matter of trying and seeing for yourself. But because I'm not expecting anything from this paper, I'm not treating it like watercolor paper, it's not really watercolor, but it does allow me to practice what I need to. There's a big difference in that. I would never be able to practice all these birds on real watercolor paper. It would cost me a fortune. I'd have to leave home. Now let's put it to the test with a really wet gradient wash. Now I have a little prop here, which means that the paper's going to be tilted. This is really important because such a paper needs to be tilted, otherwise it may easily create puddles, which wouldn't be good at all. I have prepared my paint, and here we go with a bit of yellow and a bit of orange and yellow and orange, and you know what? It's taking really well. Paint is starting to run down the page. Now if you ask me, I think that's a pretty good wash on very cheap paper, and it actually performs better than some papers that are called watercolor papers. So this is really great to practice on. And I'm not expecting anything. That's the thing. And then when I'm ready to paint something, I'll go for beautiful Arches paper or Saunders Waterford or Baohong paper, 100% cotton paper, and do my real painting. But then if it doesn't work out, I just have to do it again. But I always use the same brand of paper when I'm repeating my painting, because you get used to the way a certain paper handles. This is why I only have top-notch paper and sketchbook paper, nothing in between, because if I was to assume that a painting wasn't going to work out and say, okay, I will get some cheaper watercolor paper to practice on and then go on to my best paper, it won't work because the paper will handle in a certain way. Therefore, any type of practice is better in the sketchbook, and if I'm redoing my painting, it'll just have to be on a fresh piece of paper. But then I can always practice on the reverse side of the first one that didn't work out. It's also important to remember that there is no such thing as a failure of a painting. Maybe it's not a showpiece, but the thing is, you've certainly learned something. I learn something every single time, and every single attempt at painting is one step closer to a better piece of painting. So they're all successes, every single one of them. So let's see what's so special about these top-notch 100% cotton papers. What does cotton do? Cotton is strong. It takes a lot of water, paint, it's durable, it puts up with a lot of scrubbing, and I mean, I used to scrub out heaps. It's acid free like many others are, which means it's non-yellowing, but a beautiful paper is also sized in a beautiful way. So therefore, what sizing is it's the gelatin that they add to the paper in the manufacturing process. And what it does is it stabilizes the paper and it makes the paint seep into the paper at a nice pace, so it doesn't sit on top and yet it doesn't just sink in and become blotchy. The sizing also helps the paper to retain its beautiful vibrant colors. It also helps to lift things when you need to. Now, back to the paper. I've done some research on YouTube and found a couple of videos on comparing different types of paper, which I think you'll find very, very helpful. I certainly did. I was particularly interested in Baohong papers and was pleased to find a really, really good video by Teoh, who compares student grade and artist grade watercolor papers. They're both 100% cotton and it's really worth watching. And there's a link in the description below. I like to buy my Arches paper 10 in a pack of 22 by 30 inches or 76 centimeters by 56. I keep the sheets packed away until I need them, and then I can cut this paper up to the size that I like. It's pretty hot here in Australia most of the time, so I like to use cotton gloves when I handle the paper, just to avoid getting any sweat or grease onto the paper itself. I line up the corners and gently press onto the middle of the paper to fold it, and then with a paper bone or butter knife I can strengthen the fold. Then I turn it over and do the same, pressing on both sides. I then open up my sheet of paper and take my ruler, which isn't as long as I need it to be, but it doesn't matter. And to make sure it fits properly, I lift one side of the paper and push it in, and then I'm able to rip the paper slowly. And then I just move the ruler down and rip the rest. This gives me a half sheet of watercolor paper, but then I can cut this one in half again for a quarter sheet. I mainly like to paint on quarter sheets, half sheets, and sometimes a small one even on an eighth of a sheet. You can certainly buy pre-cut sheets in blocks or pads, but they are more expensive. I store my large sheets, the ones that are uncut, in the original plastic wrapper and in the box, and they sit behind the cupboard. I save the big plastic bags from the full sheets and use them for my half sheets, which I then fold over. Quarter sheets are just a little bit smaller than A3, so they fit nicely into A3 folders with plastic sleeves. Here I can keep all sorts of papers. I only fit a few to a sleeve because the paper's quite thick, but that's okay. When I buy Baohong paper, I can easily buy it already cut into quarter sheets or half sheets, and I have a variety of hot press, cold pressed and rough. They really are great value, and it's really worth researching to see if you can get them, well, if you want them and if you can get them where you are. And this is my pride and joy, the desk that I sit at to film these videos, and it has drawers underneath large enough to carry my half sheets of paper, of course the smaller ones as well, and it's just a pure delight. If you don't have such a lucky drawer, then a plastic box will be ideal to store your paper in. So, I hope you got something out of this. And just to recap, my favourite papers are Arches Cold Press, Saunders Waterford, which I haven't mentioned much, but it's also an absolutely beautiful paper, and Baohong, all three cold pressed. I love practicing in the Mont Marte sketchbooks because they're incredibly good for such a cheap price. Practice is practice. Practice makes practice. Just keep practicing. Anyway, if you haven't seen my video on smooth washes, you might like to see that, or anything else that YouTube comes up with. Have a great day. Bye.